Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Sports Dadcast. I am your host, Bo Bingen. Tonight I've got a special guest with me, Kyle Hungerford, my brother-in-law. Thanks for joining me, Kyle. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Bo. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to have you on because we're going to do kind of a look back at the World Cup semifinal games and look ahead at the final matchup. The World Cup being the biggest event in the world sport, I thought it only fitting to have you on. You've been a soccer fan the majority of your life. You play it, you've coached it at times. So I know you know the sport, you know the strategy. So I'm really happy to have you here with me to talk about it.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into it. We'll look back at the semifinal games. We'll start with Argentina and Croatia. They played on Tuesday. Argentina comes away with a big 3-0 win. I mean, it was essentially the Messi show. Messi with a goal and basically two assists. Julian Alvarez scores two goals. If you were looking back and on Monday, kind of predicting what you thought would happen, is this what you expected, or did you expect a different result in the 3-0 win by Argentina?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think you expect Argentina to come out of it and win it. Croatia is as good as they are. They're older, so to get the further along they get into a tournament, it gets tougher. And Messi's just been on another level this World Cup, even for his standards. He's
Yeah.
taken his game that we've seen over for club for so many years, and finally brought that to the international stage and truly shown what everyone's seen for years.
Yeah.
3-0. I don't think I would have predicted that. Croatia, they're very compact. They move well as a team. Um, if I had to guess, I would have probably said 2-1, probably
Sure.
even going to extra time, honestly.
Yeah.
That seems to be Croatia's MO in international tournaments as of late, which is why they've done so well. It's not that they're going to go out and put up 4 or 5 goals on you. If it gets into more of a wide open game, they're not going to be in it, but they've done such a good job. And obviously having one of the greatest midfielders of all time in Luka Modric, I
Yeah.
mean, that's what's taken them to the 2 semifinals, one final in the last 2 World Cups.
Yeah. And it's been interesting to watch Croatia because in the past World Cup, even the one they in 2018, they made it to the final. And in this one again, they played a lot of games that went into extra time and actually ended up in penalty kicks. But they were so successful that it took them really far into the tournament. We saw that again this year. But this was not the case. Messi and Alvarez, their counterattack for Argentina was really strong. And it seemed like Argentina was kind of okay just sitting back, letting Croatia have the ball and trying to put together an attack. And whenever Argentina could take the ball away, they just push upfield as quickly as possible, and they ended up with 3 goals out of it.
Yeah, that's kind of been the story of. I mean, I know we'll get into France, but between Argentina and France, they've just been so lethal on the counters, especially Argentina. They don't necessarily have the setup to hold possession, nor is that their style. But when they go, they go. There were a lot of
Yeah,
times where they were outnumbering Croatia on the counters, and they really they're a very well. They're more of a veteran team, so they know when to
yeah,
pick their moments to attack. And obviously having Messi in there, Otamendi, they're just it's a much more well-rounded team, I think, than what we saw
sure.
even in 2018.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because here in America, we don't get a lot of chances on national television to watch a player like Messi. But if you watch him, and what I was seeing was I kind of compared it to Steph Curry. Obviously, basketball and soccer are much different sports, but the way that they kind of pick their spots really carefully on the floor, and Messi more so because it's soccer and the game is much longer, but he kind of just walks around and kind of just lollygags almost the way it looks, and then when he gets the ball, he flips it and it's go, go, go. But I thought that was really cool to watch because it's not like other players.
Yeah. One thing that's, I mean, obviously, and we'll get into this later, I'm sure, but just the Messi talk in general. I mean, he's obviously the greatest of all time. Some will argue maybe he's the second, but he's right there.
Okay.
The fun thing to watch about Messi, though, is if you really just focus on him for a match, the first 15, 20 minutes, there's not a ton going on. He's not
Yeah.
attacking direct. He's just assessing the game, where things are at, and kind of picking things out. And he does it even more now than ever. Obviously, he's 30. Is he 35 now?
That
So
sounds right.
probably in his last stint here, but he doesn't use all his energy up right away. He's very much just trying to figure out what's going on, where the weak
Sure.
points are. Um, which is what has allowed him to be successful for as long as he has, since he came onto the world stage at 17, 18 years old. And now here we are
Yeah.
almost 20 years later, and he's still, the best in the world.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we saw out of this game against Croatia. It seemed like the first 10, 15 minutes, Croatia kind of dominated the ball. I mean, really dominated the ball. They had all the possession in the beginning, and then it was it kind of flipped, and Argentina got that first goal, and it really felt like they ran away with it. And it was more so Croatia had the ball, but you never felt like they were really under attack. It felt like Argentina had control of the game. And once they got that first goal and then eventually the second goal, it just seemed like Croatia had no answer.
Yeah, Croatia, they do a very good job of possessing the ball and kind of picking and choosing it as well, but they're not. You're right. It didn't feel like they were lethal. It didn't feel like they were, even though they had possession, they weren't in control of the game.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the best way to describe that game is just, even though Argentina didn't have that ball, they were by far the best team.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the game on Wednesday, France and Morocco. France, the defending World Cup champion, you knew they were gonna be here. Morocco, actually, a quick note on them, the first African nation to make it to a World Cup semifinal. I was really surprised to see that. But hey, kudos to them. They made it to a semifinal, got matched up with France, the juggernaut, the runaway freight train. France comes away with a 2-0 win. But it seemed like Morocco had their chances in that game. So if you look back to what you would have expected compared to the result, what were your thoughts?
Well, I think first and foremost is, I mean, if you had to pick an African country that you thought was going to be in the semifinal, it wasn't going to be Morocco.
No.
Obviously, going into the tournament, everyone was picking Senegal as the kind of the golden child of Africa
Yeah.
to make a run potentially. Obviously, being from the U.S., we've seen Ghana make it a couple times, unfortunately,
Yep.
knock the U.S. out. But Senegal's kind of been the team. Obviously, the Mane injury going into the tournament really hurt their chances, and then
Yeah.
it didn't play as well as everyone would have thought. Morocco, I don't know if there's one word that can describe that team. I mean, their coach, I think this was his eighth match in charge. They
Yeah.
just made a fresh change. One thing to note with Morocco is Hakim Ziyech, obviously one of the cornerstones of that team. Um, Him and the previous national team manager had a rift where it didn't seem like he was going to play for the national team again.
Okay.
Obviously, them letting him go, or letting the coach go, and getting Ziyech back in made a huge difference. Obviously, don't going down that right side. Ziyech and Hakimi, there's more to the team than those two, but I know for them to even have a chance in this game, those two are gonna have to play lights out. And unfortunately, they didn't play bad, but they didn't play well enough to win.
Yeah.
You're right. They did have a few chances, but a very similar story to the France, or I'm sorry, to Argentina and Croatia, where France just, they felt in control right from the start.
Yeah.
Obviously, Morocco, I think going into that game, they only had one goal allowed. The defense was just unreal. It didn't matter who they brought in when Saiski went out with an injury. He was kind of the cornerstone at the back for them. They just, they kept plugging in new guys, and they played like a team.
Mhm.
And that's one thing that you got to give credit to their coaches. They were very well disciplined. They all played as one unit, and that was a true wall at the back. The problem for them is once France scored, it was broken, and they were gonna have to put up at least one. Uh, Realistically, I think my thought going into that, the only way they were gonna have a chance was either going to extra time and making it penalties, or them somehow getting a goal and winning 1-0.
Yeah.
Playing from behind for that team, all that France really had to do was shut down Hakimi and Ziyech,
Yeah.
and they did a really good job with Ziyech. Hakimi, he had some opportunities, but it wasn't enough. France is the complete package.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've said this even before the tournament. I thought they were going to be a letdown, just because,
Really? Okay.
not because of the quality of the team, but just past history. If you look at in the recent past here, Spain, after winning in 2010, 2014, they bowed out right away. Germany
Sure.
wins it in 2014, bowed out right away. It seems to be a common trend that
Yeah.
previous World Cup winners don't make it to the knockouts, or don't make it very far. Um, Obviously, France, I believe, is the first defending champion since Brazil, and I think it was 02, to make it back to the final.
Yeah.
And the first game, a little shaky, didn't look, there's a little rust to be knocked off, but
Sure.
They look good. I mean, they look
Yeah.
just as good as they did in 2018, if not better. Obviously, Mbappe he's continually getting better and better.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's just you're Argentina is going to have a hard time. With Argentina, obviously, the focus is Messi.
Yeah.
Shut down Messi, make someone else beat you.
Sure.
France, England tried shutting down Mbappe. Morocco tried shutting him down. But the problem is there's other guys on that team that can score, that can create opportunities.
Yeah.
And Greece, the biggest, the talisman of the team, I feel, obviously Mbappe is their best player, but the one
Sure.
that makes it all go is Antoine Griezmann. You
Yeah.
just watching him; he's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Compared to the club level, he doesn't get used this way, where he plays more of like a 10 that kind of can roam around, playing that false nine or a second striker with Giroud. He pretty much has freedom to go wherever he sees fit, and
Sure.
he's a fun player to watch. Obviously, we haven't had a ton of chances to watch him with his loan back to Atletico. When he went to Barcelona, he wasn't getting as many minutes as we're used to seeing him, but
Yeah.
he's a fun player to watch.
Yeah, and if you look at the game and you watch it back, it was like Morocco tried to do everything through Ziyech, and they had some opportunities, but there really was nothing to do for them. And that first goal that France scored was kind of a scramble in front of goal, but when they put it away, it almost felt like it sucked all the air out of the room, and there was just no way back for Morocco. So if we look ahead to the Argentina France final. I know you said that Argentina is going to have their hands full, and they certainly will. These two teams met in the last World Cup in 2018, and France ended up winning 4-3. What would you say if you had to pick a matchup going into this game? Is this what you would have wanted, or would you have rather seen a different set of teams?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say no. I'd say yes. It'd be a matchup that you'd want to see. Obviously, if we're being completely unrealistic, we want to see the U.S. in the final. That's
Right. Yeah.
probably not going to happen for a little while.
Right.
But yeah, you can't really complain about this matchup. Obviously, the story going into the tournament, it was Brazil Argentina. Everyone's picks were Brazil versus Argentina in the final.
Yeah.
Obviously, that wasn't going to work out. Both on the same side of the bracket,
Right.
and then with Brazil bowing out to Croatia, we didn't even get to see the matchup that a lot of people wanted to see. That's probably the most intense rivalry in soccer or football, whatever you want to call it there.
Sure.
But uh, I would have liked to have seen that one.
Yeah.
That one would have been fun. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
So I mean, as far as this final, yeah, I don't think Brazil, Argentina, France. Those are the three teams that if I had to pick that I wanted to see in the final. Um, I can't say enough about France, just how much fun they are to watch, because there isn't a weak point in that team.
Right.
They're very well rounded, and they can hurt you from all over the place.
Yeah.
Obviously, they'll have their hands full with Messi going into this final, but we'll see.
Yeah. I guess if I could pick a matchup, being that Messi and Ronaldo, this is probably going to be their last World Cup. I would have liked to see them square off in the final, but hey, that's not what we're going to get. So that's all right.
Yeah.
It's okay. This is going to be a fun one. I'm looking forward to it. Since you coached soccer, you've played it for a number of years. If you had to pick an advantage for either team, where do you think there's one that you can point out?
Um, uh, yeah, Argentina obviously is Messi. I mean,
Yeah.
that's given. Where the X factor for Argentina is going to be Julian Alvarez. I
Yeah.
think I saw a stat earlier today that out of he has been when he's on the field, I think Argentina scored all of their goals but one. And defensively, he does such a good job as far as pressuring the back line.
Sure.
And with that, I believe they've only given up one goal as well when he's been on the field.
Okay.
So matchup, the obvious pick is Messi, but I think Julian Alvarez is going to have to start, and he's going to have to put a lot of or constant pressure on that back line. Obviously, he's young, full of energy. He's probably the guy, the spark that Argentina is going to need.
Sure.
And we'll see from there. For France, again, Mbappe is going to be the focal point of the Argentinian defense.
Yeah.
I think it's Griezmann. Griezmann's going to be the key. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a goal from Giroud, the way he's been playing this World Cup. Obviously, he's a focal point of the attack, not in a traditional striker way. This World
Right.
Cup, he's been scoring 2018, he didn't have a single goal, but he was integral to the team.
Yeah,
Same thing now, except he's putting in goals. He looks good. He's 30, I think he's 36, 37 years old.
yeah,
Obviously that kind of leads into the whole Benzema thing going on, is they're saying he could be back, but
yeah,
I don't see them bringing him back. Giroud's just playing way too well. Um, there's a lot of different areas from France that, as far as matchups. I think you also got to watch out for Dembele up top.
yeah,
He's looked very, very dangerous. Finally started to kind of come of age to the talent that was expected when Barcelona bought him from Dortmund.
yeah.
He's looked good. That those would be the matchups that I'm excited to see.
Sure. I think you have to give France the edge in this game because of Griezmann specifically and the way that he kind of controls the midfield. So would you say you would expect France to have a lot of the ball in this game, especially
Yeah,
driving it through the midfield? You got to figure it's going to be hard for Argentina to win the ball back, being that the midfield of France is so strong.
yeah. I think they're gonna. Argentina's gonna do their best to keep the ball out wide.
Yeah.
If you can keep Mbappe out on the wings, if you can keep Dembele out on the wings, then that's a win. If Griezmann does get the ball in the middle and gets it a lot, that's going to be trouble.
Yeah.
It's just Griezmann's just a nightmare. He's quick. His movement's great. And the 1-2s that he has with Giroud and Mbappe, it's gonna be tough. At least if they keep the ball on the outsides, they know they basically only have one half that field to work with. If they can't do that, if they can't keep it out of the middle, then they're in trouble, I think.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting to see if Messi and Alvarez up top can break away and score a goal or two. And that kind of leads us into your expectations. What would you say would be your pick for the game? And do you have a score for us?
I think it'll be France. I think it's going to be France. I think it would be France 3-2. Just
Okay.
because I think it really obviously a lot of it comes down to who scores first. But
Sure.
if if France if France can get the first goal, that game is going to go wide open.
Yeah.
Argentina is going to know they have to attack right away. They're not going to be able to sit back and defend and just let France have the ball.
Right.
But if that's not the case, I very well could see it get into 0-0 at halftime. Both teams are going to just kind of be feeling each other out. Obviously, it's very typical of Messi to kind of to wait and assess, but it all comes down to if France can get that first goal. If they
Yeah.
can, then they're putting themselves in a very good spot just because of the way Argentina has been playing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point because if on the other side, if Argentina were to get that first goal, you'd really expect them to sit back and almost go probably to a back five and really try and pack it in front of goal and try and sit on that one goal lead. But you're right. I think if France gets the first goal, it's going to have to open things up and you might see 5 or 6 goals in this game, which would be a lot of fun from a viewership perspective. And even as a neutral, I mean, obviously soccer games can sometimes end 1-0 or 0-0 and
Mm-hmm.
go into extra time. But if you can get a game that opens up and see a bunch of scoring, especially in a World Cup final, that would be a lot of fun. And that leads me into my next thing is that I really want this game to end in regulation or in extra time. I would really rather not see the game go into penalty kicks. I don't want a World Cup final to end in penalty kicks. I don't think that's necessarily the way the game should end. What would you say on that point?
Yeah, I agree. If barring the final with France and Croatia in 18, you had Mario Götze in 2014 hitting in the game winner. I believe that was in extra time.
Way late in extra
Um,
time, right? Yeah.
yep. And then in 2010, you had Iniesta, who I believe it was in the 117th minute,
Yeah.
scored the winning goal. That's what you want to see.
Yeah.
Uh, you can argue if you want it to be wide open, you don't want it to be 0-0 going into extra time. But I agree with you though. I would love to see it go into extra time, a late goal in the late 80th, 89th, 90th minute, tie it up and to put it to extras. That's the ideal scenario.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the matchup where it's gonna be tied going into the end and taking it to extra time. Um, I think if Argentina does have the lead, they're probably, or if they have the lead late, France is going to be pushing. And Argentina is so good on the counter that they're probably going to get another one
Sure.
later on in the game if France can't equalize. So
Yeah.
that's the thought, at least, is that it's going to come down to if Argentina's defense can hold up, and then if they can just get one break. Alvarez has just been unbelievable on the counter.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's got a ton of pace. So
Yeah, it'll be a fun matchup. Played on Sunday. I think it's 9 o'clock Eastern time AM. Obviously, they're on the other side of the globe, so they're going to be playing early in the day Central time for us. I think it's 9 a.m.
uh,
Eastern time, so it would be 8 o'clock Central time, our time.
yeah, yeah, it's either 8 or 9. I'd have to take a look.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, it'll be fun if you have a chance and you're up early before football starts. Get the World Cup on it. It'll be a fun matchup to watch.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna be good.
last point on it. If Argentina, Messi hasn't won a World Cup with Argentina. It seems to be that's the last trophy that's kind of evaded him. He's won all kinds of club accolades, all kinds of things with Argentina, but never won a World Cup. And he's got plenty of individual awards to stack on his name. If Argentina and Messi win a World Cup, do you think that cements his argument as the greatest soccer player ever?
Yeah, I think I used to be obviously everyone got caught up in this debate of Ronaldo Messi, Ronaldo Messi.
Yeah,
Ronaldo's a phenomenal goal scorer, and I've been a huge Ronaldo fan. Honestly, up until late, Ronaldo I think was a little bit more fun to watch when it came purely to goal scoring, just because he could do it any which way, headers left, right.
yeah,
He's a fun goal scorer. But overall, Messi, I think Messi's already taken that title over. He doesn't need a World Cup to get there. As
okay,
you could see, the whole sporting the soccer world is fallen in love with this story as far as getting Messi finally truly carrying Argentina to the final. It's all written. The script's
yeah,
written. It sure looks like it's going to happen. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of heartbreak if he doesn't win.
yeah,
But I don't think that him winning or losing this World Cup, or I'm sorry, winning this World Cup final is going to be needed to cement that.
okay,
He, yeah, I don't believe that, and I think that the argument's been fading over the last few years
sure,
as he continues to play, and he's gonna. I could very well see Messi being able to play well late into his 30s. Obviously, we're seeing the decline with Ronaldo right now
yeah,
because of what he relies on. He relies on his athletic ability, purely his athletic ability.
yeah,
Where Messi, that's not the case. He's relying more on his brain, assessing the game and picking his points. So
yeah.
I think he hasn't ruled it out that he won't be at the next World Cup either. So a lot of people saying is this his last one, more than likely, but he won't say no to that yet.
Sure. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing to see if he can pull it out and what happens after the fact. Because if they do win,
Yeah.
you got to think he hangs it up, right? I mean,
Oh
he's
yeah,
getting all the time.
yeah, I believe I was reading that he had said that there's no better way to go out. So
Right.
I mean, there isn't. Obviously, there's no way that you can top that.
Yeah.
From a legacy standpoint, nothing's gonna taint his legacy. But if he were to come back at 39 for one more World Cup, what would be the point if they win this one? There's
Yeah.
nothing, like you said, there's nothing left to prove. He's won everything.
Yeah. And you would think if they were to lose and he does come back for the next World Cup, which would be in the United States, so it'd be a great idea for him to come and play. So just so we can watch him maybe live. But it would have to be in a limited role. You know what I mean? At
Yeah,
almost 40 years old, it would have to be in a
yeah.
limited role, maybe coming off the bench as a sub in games. But you certainly wouldn't expect him to be playing full matches at nearly 40 years old.
Yeah, not to the extent of how obviously these World Cup matches, the games there's very few breaks in between. Um, the nice part, at least with I should say that because there obviously wasn't a break going into this World Cup. The fact that they put it right in the middle of the majority of the world's club seasons,
Yeah.
uh, honestly, I'm surprised we haven't seen more injuries. And we maybe will. Maybe that's going to come up here in end of December, January when the club seasons start coming on.
Sure.
Um, but he will have at least a little bit of rest going in, from club to going into the World Cup. But
Yeah.
kind of going back to what you were saying about seeing him live, who knows? You might see him in the U.S. sooner than that.
Yeah.
A lot of rumors circulating about him going to Miami.
Yeah, that'd be really cool too to have him playing in the US consistently. That would be fun to see. So
Yeah.
we didn't prep on this one, but just curious on your thoughts on the U.S. What did you think of their showing coming out of the group stage? Barely, albeit barely, but they did
Yeah.
make it out of the group stage and did go down to the Netherlands. But what did you think of the way the U.S. played?
Uh, Mixed emotions. Obviously, the first match against Wales was
Yeah,
underwhelming. That's a match they should have won. But they definitely bounced back against England.
yeah,
Obviously, there were, outside of your US fan base, there were not a lot of people that even gave them a remote shot to even be in it. And I think you could argue that they had a good chance to win that game. They
agreed.
looked very good. And then I felt like against coming back against Iran, they kind of underwhelmed. They didn't really carry the momentum from the England match over. They still played well. Obviously, we have a lot of bright spots going into 2026.
Yeah,
The Netherlands, three individual errors, just mental mistakes.
yeah,
You got caught out on the break, um, not making the adjustments needed. Obviously, we had a feeling that's how they were going to play.
right.
We didn't really account for that.
Yeah,
That's one of the areas I think the U.S. is going to have to improve on going into 2026. Is just our if you look at Morocco, Croatia, those type of teams where they're not loaded with world class talent. They
right.
play as a team. They play as a collective,
Yeah,
and that's one thing that the U.S. they didn't. And I don't know if that's on Berhalter or if that's just kind of the talent we have, but they don't move as a collective and as a team. Obviously, there's been with what was coming on with Gio Reyna this week, the
yeah,
statements there was some apparently some rifts within the team,
yeah.
but yeah. So mixed. If you'd have told me we're getting knocked out in the round of 16, I would before the tournament, I'd have been happy with that. And if we'd have drawn England, I've been very happy with that. England was
Yeah,
my, if you want to call it a dark horse going into the World Cup. Um, I think a lot of people do not give England enough credit. That team is full of talent,
yeah.
and I would say they slightly underwhelmed, but to lose to France it's tough.
I mean, yeah, what can you say? And they had another
Yeah.
chance. I mean, they had Harry Kane at the spot with a chance to tie the game. You would
Yeah.
like your chances in those situations. Yeah, he missed the penalty kick, and they ended up losing. And France is here in the final with a good chance to win. So you can't really take it too much away from England. But I think the U.S. was in a good spot. They had chances to win against England. They should have beat Wales. You're right. But it sounds like there's going to be a new manager. That's the talk. I would probably expect that to be the case going into the next World Cup. We'll see what ends up happening. But being that they were either the second or third youngest team at the World Cup, you like the way they're headed. You like the
Yeah.
direction that they're
Yep.
headed. They're going to have good players and they're going to continue to progress. You would think. So I like the way they're trending going into the 2026 World Cup, which is in the U.S., which is exciting.
Yeah, there's a lot to if you're a fan of the US, there's a lot to be excited about. Like you say, being the youngest, they're gonna get a ton of experience from this World Cup.
Yeah,
Obviously, we know typically when a World Cup's played, the host country, they have that home field advantage, and usually it does push them along.
yeah,
So, a lot of these guys are going to be in their mid to upper 20s. Hopefully that experience is there. Hopefully this most of the squad is still or comes back.
yeah,
And the expectations should be higher. I mean, I know we're 3.5 years out, but I don't think round of 16 is the goal. I mean,
right.
semifinals might be a little ambitious, but there's no reason in my mind that the U.S. can't make it to the quarterfinals. Obviously, you never know. Once you get to the knockouts, look, we had Morocco make it all the way to
Yeah,
semifinals and getting there with only giving up one goal. No one would
yeah,
have, no one would have predicted that going into the tournament. So anything can happen. The U.S. has obviously done it before. I think it was 2002 in, I believe it was Korea. They made it to I think it was the semifinals, quarterfinals or semifinals, but they made some waves. That was the first
yeah,
time that it was kind of like, okay, they can go on a run and cause some issues. So
yeah,
um, I'm excited. I can't wait. I think the timing couldn't be better for U.S. soccer coming into 2026. As far as having that World Cup, they're probably going to have the best U.S. team that the U.S. has ever fielded. If
yeah,
things continue, like you said, continue trending the way they are, it remains to be seen. We need a striker. That's the
yep,
big thing. We need
yep.
we need a striker.
Yeah, and it's a thing. It's a cool thing too because there's so much time in between. We say 3.5 years. It'll be really interested to see. I'll be interested to see if they can pick someone up along the way. because if they can find themselves a striker, and it's obviously probably going to be a younger guy, but if they can find someone that consistently put balls in the net in front of goal, it's really going to help that team. So it'll be fun. We'll be here in the States. I know I'm going to try and get to a game. I know you are as well. So it'll be really interesting to see what it's like to be at a World Cup, the biggest event in the world sport. It'll be a big thing here in the U.S. and it hasn't been in the U.S. since, what was it, 96 or something like that.
Yeah,
I
it
guess I
was
don't remember exactly which one it was.
I think you're right. I think it was 96, I believe, when the US
Yeah.
hosted it on its own.
Yeah, so it's been, I mean, 20 years since it was in the world or in the U.S. the last time. So it'll be fun. We're looking forward to it. Obviously the final, the World Cup final, Argentina France on Sunday morning. If you can tune in, it'll be a fun one. Before we go, I want to get your thoughts on the Packers. Are they dead?
No, they're not dead yet.
All right.
So there's, there's crazier things that can happen. I stand by that. The NFC team is going to make it in at 9-8. So
Yeah.
who that's going to be, I mean, obviously, it's an outside shot. But
Yeah.
with that being said, what we got? We got the Rams. I think we have the Lions once more. I think the
Yep.
Vikings
And
and
we're in Miami on Christmas Day against the
that's
Dolphins.
it,
So
Miami.
those are
So
the
that'll be
four.
a tough one.
Yeah.
I think I just saw today is point differential for the Vikings is at they're 10 and what are they 10-3 right now, 10-2, and it's at
Yeah.
-1. So
Yeah.
it's one of those crazy things where, well, last year they couldn't get it done in close games. They're getting it done right now, but they're riding a
Yeah.
fine line. So we'll see what happens with the Packers. If they get hot, then who
Yeah.
knows?
The chances are slim, but if you look at the
Very.
last four games they've got, it can happen. They've got the Rams, who are, it's hard to know with that team because they've got a new QB with Baker. They're
Yeah.
playing at home for that game. It'll be
Yeah.
tough, but it's, you would like the Packers' chance. They're favored by, I think, 7.5 in that game, which I think
Oh
is
well.
absurd. But yeah, it'll
Yeah,
be interesting to see what
it's
happens.
gonna be cold. It's I
You know,
think I looked 'cause we're gonna be up at the game actually, and it's gonna be a high
oh,
of
cool.
16 that day, low of 7.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's gonna be a frozen tundra type of night. So and that's
yeah,
obviously it's always tough for a team coming from warm weather like the like LA or like the
yeah,
Miamis. So
yeah.
um they gotta win out. That's
Hmm.
simple as that. They have to win out, and that's really that is the only shot they have. And then they need they need some other things to happen. But
They're gonna need
um
help.
yeah, but it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, so last note, if you have any hope up for the Packers, if you're a Packer fan, the Packers play at home against the Rams. They're in Miami, who seems to be reeling, and then they're at home for the Vikings, who, like we said, have been horrendous point differential wise. They're teetering. We don't know what's going to
Mhm.
happen with them, and then we've got the Lions at home as well. The last week of the year, who the Lions home and road, and then inside and outside splits are very drastic. So things can fall the right way for the Packers if they take care of their own business. But like you said, yeah, they're going to need some help. But we will
Yep.
see
One
what
one
happens.
game at a time.
Yep, exactly. Well, again, Kyle, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate
Yep.
you being here with
Thanks,
me.
Paul.
We're excited for the World Cup final on Sunday. I will see you very soon. Everyone else, thank
Yep.
you very much for listening. Everybody have a good night, and we will see you again soon.
Thanks, Paul. Take care.
See ya.